Stop everything right now. I don't care where you are, what you're doing, what's running through your mind. This video is not here by accident. You held on. You carried a weight that should not have lasted this long. You watched resources drain away, doors close, not because you lacked faith, but because you were exhausted from carrying the invisible. And yet, here you are. That has a name. Chosen one, consecrated endurance. Today, something moved in the heavenly court. There is an offer, powerful, real, divine, directed specifically at you. I need to tell you what that means before you close this video. You didn't arrive here because of an algorithm. This is alignment. This is destiny. The shift you felt coming, it has arrived. The question now is, will you be clear enough to receive it? Let me tell you what this season has actually looked like, because I don't think anyone has said it to you plainly enough. At 3 in the morning, when everyone else is asleep, your mind is still running the same loop, going over the same decisions, asking the same questions. Where did I go wrong? What would have happened if I had moved sooner, stayed longer, said less, believed more? You replay it, you analyze it, and the answer never fully satisfies, because the ache underneath the question isn't really about strategy. It's about exhaustion so deep, it has started to feel like your identity. Your body knows it too. Even when there's no immediate crisis, there's a tension that never fully leaves. A low-level alertness, like a soldier who came home from a war, but whose nervous system never got the memo that the battle ended. You go through the motions of regular life, conversations, responsibilities, routines, but somewhere beneath the surface you're still braced, still waiting for the next thing to fall apart. That's not weakness. That's what happens to people who have survived things that were not supposed to be survived alone. And the money. You know what I'm talking about. It comes in, maybe not much, maybe more than before. And yet it never seems to settle. It disappears faster than it arrives, and you can't always point to exactly where it went, just that it's gone, and the margin you thought you were building dissolves again. There is an invisible leak somewhere that no budget spreadsheet has been able to fix, because the problem is not financial, it's spiritual. Something is draining from a place you haven't been able to name yet. You've watched it happen to others too, haven't you? People around you receiving exactly what you have been asking God for, and you smiled. You congratulated them. You said all the right things. But in the quiet afterward, you ask the question that you might not even be willing to admit out loud right now. When is it my turn? And the silence that followed that question felt heavier than any answer you could have received. Then there's the paralysis. The way a fear of making the wrong move again has disguised itself as wisdom, as patience, as caution. You have a decision in front of you, maybe several, and you don't move, not because you don't know what you want, but because you've been burned before. You stepped out in faith and the ground wasn't there. You believed the door was open and it closed in your face. And now your discernment and your fear have become so entangled that you can no longer tell the difference between the voice of the Spirit and the voice of your own trauma. So you wait. And the waiting drags, and the dragging becomes its own kind of suffering. And what no one around you fully understands is the specific quality of exhaustion that comes from waiting so long that you no longer know whether you can believe a turnaround is actually coming. You want to believe. You've been told to believe. You've spoken the verses, you've prayed the prayers, but somewhere inside there's a quiet fear that maybe this is just how things are, that the breakthrough is for other people, that you've been marked for endurance rather than for receiving. If any of that landed, if even one of those images touched something real in you, I need you to pause for 1 second and hit the like button right now. Not because of numbers, because I want to call this a prophetic agreement. Every chosen one who affirms this message with that simple gesture, every person who says, yes, this is me. I'm declaring over you that within the next 72 hours, clarity will break through. A door of perception will open. Something you could not see before will become unmistakable. That's a prayer. That's a decree. And it begins with your agreement. Now stay with me, because what I'm about to share in the next few minutes is the very thing you've needed someone to put language to. I've put together something called the Solomon Code. A path in 3 movements, designed specifically for chosen ones who are carrying prophetic potential but have been stopped at the threshold of receiving because the channel of discernment has been clouded by too much war, too much weight, too much waiting. If you want to understand what those 3 movements are, look for the pinned comment below this video. I'll explain it there in detail. But first, stay here with me, because what I'm about to walk you through is the foundation that makes everything else make sense. There was a man who sat in a prison he did not deserve. He had done nothing wrong. He had honored God in a foreign house, served faithfully in conditions that would have broken most people, and been falsely accused by the very person he had refused to dishonor. And he did not receive an immediate rescue. He received more waiting, more obscurity, more of the kind of suffering that happens not because of failure but because of faithfulness. His name was Joseph. And the reason I bring him to you today is not to give you another sermon about endurance. You've had enough sermons about endurance. I bring him to you because of what happened the moment the turnaround came. The turnaround did not arrive as a rescue. It arrived as an offer, a powerful, a specific, divinely timed offer. Pharaoh had a dream no one could interpret, and one man in the palace remembered that there was someone in the prison who had a gift. And just like that, the door opened. But here is what I need you to notice. Joseph received that offer because he was internally positioned to recognize it. He didn't stumble into the palace confused, bitter, or locked in survival mode. When the moment came, something in him was ready. And I want to talk about what that readiness looks like, because it is not what most of us think. The soul that has been in survival mode too long develops a particular kind of blindness. It is not a lack of faith, not a lack of prayer, not a lack of desire. It is a blindness born from constant bracing. When every moment of the past few years has required you to hold the line, your inner world trains itself to look for threats rather than for gifts. You scan for what could go wrong. You brace for the next loss. And when the offer arrives, the powerful, real, divine offer that heaven has already signed off on, you can miss it. Not because you're ungrateful. Because your discernment has been operating in defense mode for so long, it no longer recognizes an opening. This is what Genesis 50:20 teaches beneath the surface of its more famous meaning. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today. Joseph didn't say this in bitterness. He didn't say it as a coping mechanism. He said it as someone who had allowed the narrative of heaven to reframe every single wound in his story until nothing was wasted, nothing was random, and nothing was outside the purpose of God. That kind of clarity is not automatic. It is cultivated, and it is what makes it possible to receive an offer when it comes, because you are no longer asking whether you deserve it. You already know the answer. I want to give you something practical right now, something Joseph would have recognized. I call it the Joseph inventory, drawn directly from the principle in Genesis 50:20. 3 questions. I want you to sit with each one slowly, not rushing to the next. This is not a checklist, this is a repositioning of the soul. First question, what happened to me that I called destruction, but that, with today's eyes, actually positioned me for this moment? Think about the thing you still carry as a wound. The loss, the rejection, the door that closed, the relationship that ended, the plan that fell apart. Is it possible? Not certain? Not provable right now, just possible. That what felt like destruction was actually a repositioning. That the path you lost was not your path, and the pain of losing it was the very force that moved you to where the offer is waiting. Second question, what direction or decision have I been delaying out of fear of making the wrong move again? And what has that delay cost me? Be honest here. Don't justify the delay with spiritual language just yet. Name the actual cost of the pause. Because sometimes what we call patience is actually avoidance, dressed in faith language. And the chosen one, who is about to receive something new, needs to be honest about where the blockage is. Third question. If I knew for certain that heaven has already guaranteed the outcome, what would my first step be tonight? Not this week. Tonight. If the fear of being wrong were completely removed, if the guarantee were absolute, if you were standing where Joseph stood after Pharaoh's dream, what would you do? The answer to that question is rarely complicated. It is usually simple, quiet, and slightly terrifying, and it is almost always the right move. This is what Joseph did between the pit and the palace. He didn't wait for certainty before becoming someone capable of receiving it. He positioned himself internally, so that when the offer came he could receive it clearly. But here's what I want you to understand. 3 questions are a starting point, not a system. You can answer those questions tonight and feel a shift, and I believe you will. But if the underlying pattern is not addressed, the survival mode lens will return. The 3 in the morning loop will restart. The invisible leak will continue. Because what the chosen one in this season needs is not more endurance. You don't need more strength to hold on. You need discernment to recognize what heaven has already placed in your hands. God has taken over the battle. Your season of war is over. Now begins the season of governing. That's your mind, your decisions, your resources. And to govern, endurance isn't enough. You need what Solomon asked for when God offered him anything. Not wealth, not victory, discernment. The wisdom to know the difference between what is truly from heaven and what is just the echo of your own fear. The clarity to recognize an offer when it arrives. The inner quietness to receive what your outer circumstances have not yet confirmed. That is exactly what the Solomon Code is designed to build. It moves in 3 directions. The first is a diagnostic, a way of identifying exactly where the gaps in your spiritual discernment have been, not in a condemning way, in a clarifying one, like light in a room that has been dark too long. The second movement is about quieting the soul, not the popular self-help version of rest, but the biblical process of stilling the inner noise that accumulated through seasons of war, the kind of quiet that Joseph carried even in a prison cell. And the third movement is a daily protocol, specific, simple, built for people who are tired and don't have hours to spend, but need a way to tune the channel of their spirit so that when the offer comes they can hear it clearly. You don't need to know Hebrew, you don't need to be a theologian. You need what has always been available to the chosen and rarely been explained in plain language. Check the pinned comment. The Solomon Code is there. I've laid it out for you step by step. Before I release you, I need one more thing from you. Drop your city in the comments below, just the city, nothing else required. It's not just information, it's a declaration that you were here, that you heard this, that you are positioning yourself to receive. And as you type it, say this over yourself, 3 to 5 words, something like, I know who I am. Say it out loud if you can. Let those words come from a real place, not a desperate one, from the part of you that already knows this season is turning. And if someone in your life is walking through exactly what we talked about today, the exhaustion, the paralysis, the waiting, send them this video. Not as advice, as a seed. Because the chosen ones who are supposed to receive together often need to find each other first. I want to say something honest before we close. Everything we talked about today, the Joseph inventory, the questions, the shift, it only works if you decide to act on it. And I know the pattern well. You'll feel something right now, in this moment, and then life will come back in. The notifications, the responsibilities, the familiar weight. And the decision to take the next step will sit at the edge of your mind, waiting. I'm not going to pressure you. You get to decide when. But I want you to know that the offer that is coming, and it is coming, has a timing. And the version of you that takes the next step tonight will meet it with more clarity than the version who decides to wait one more week. May the wisdom from above be the ground beneath your feet today. May your soul find rest. May every weight you have been carrying find its proper place. Not in your hands, not in your chest, but in the hands of the one who called you chosen before you ever called yourself anything at all. Until the next encounter.